I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. This episode is sponsored by Ahrefs. If you're new, Confessions runs a little counterintuitive in that this isn't an interview show and it doesn't last an hour. And for those of you that know me, none of this is out of character. In Confessions, expect me to unpack my client testing and research experience as an SEO for the past 17 years. You may just want to brace yourself for the least obvious SEO podcast on the planet. It's in here, but it's not always right up front. And if your recognition of it is going to depend on your level of experience in the field. This is a short form, one-way chat about anything and everything in SEO that isn't overtly some trick or hack to get to the number one spot on page one, or to 10x your traffic, or to 3x your revenue. Not that what I share won't eventually get you there. I just don't believe that getting to page one safely and to be able to sustain it has anything to do with hacks or tricks to get you there. To be a well-rounded SEO, we need a more broader understanding of search engines than most of us do, and these updates, especially when it comes to helpful content. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. You should expect plain talk with little, probably no engineering mumbo jumbo, and for our time together to be right around 15 minutes. We've all got work to do, and this SEO life thing isn't going to do itself. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 19 of Confessions of an SEO. I'm calling it Ain't Hard to Follow 1,000 Cows, which is my nod to my favorite and current TV show, Yellowstone. It ain't hard, but you've got to know what you're looking at. Today's topic, I'm going to share what I consider to be a real breakthrough with an enhanced view of how helpful content rules treat the canonical and the anchor links that come out of the table of contents, that to show that it's basically definitely not helpful and how to see that in the data. But first, let's talk about indexation. This has been an interesting week on the indexation front, and not just this past week. I mean, since March 20th, which was the official end of the March core update. If it's a Thursday, we got a new bot, specifically a new mobile Chrome Google bot. These are the crawlers that hit our content first for the purpose of indexation. And in the last 8 weeks on Thursdays, that's how Google has provided this to us. So why should we care? How does knowing this help us reach page one? This is exactly the kind of stuff I share in crawl or no crawl reports to supporting members. The importance of knowing when we see something we don't expect, we have to make a judgment call. We have to know, is this on our side of the street or is this on Google's side of the street? Now that's really life advice, right? We always need to know before we take action on something. Is it our work or is it someone else's? Otherwise, suffering will ensue, and usually our own. If you're making tweaks and making more tweaks because you don't know if that was a real drop or simply Google flipping things around a little bit, testing out a new Chrome that's now better at rendering JavaScript content, you could tweak yourself into page 3 with one hand tied behind your back. If you don't know how that can happen, most of us are making tweaks based on data from analyzing search results, either through specialized SEO tools or tools are making recommendations to us. Now, if Google is testing out a new Chrome and rolling back various results, I'm going to say it like the Nazis in Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, you won't find the treasure because your measurements are based on incomplete data, which means you're digging in the wrong place. And that's why I choose to share in Crawl or No Crawl. You can just search for it in Google or Bing and you'll find it. It's on Substack, and I'll put a link in the description so you can see the subscription levels. Now, before I get into the helpful content portion of this episode, again, I'd like to thank Ahrefs for being the sponsor. Ahrefs has a keyword finder that clusters search terms by parent topic. That's what they call it. And I love it. If you don't know the power of that in this day and age of helpful content, allow me to enlighten you. I have a whole podcast detailing how traditional keyword research has been failing a lot of people. And it was inspired from an article by Dale Bertrand in Search Engine Land. And I will put a link in the description for you to that episode. It's about 17 minutes door to door. Now, the keyword finder will give you not only detailed search volume trends, but also traffic potential. So should you succeed in ranking for this keyword phrase? And as a forensic SEO, my favorite is the historical ranking feature. But it's even more. You can study the SERP for a particular query, get a full history of search ads, and even compare SERPs side by side based on different dates, which I think is hugely helpful. And there's also a feature so that can kind of help you answer your own question. Should I target this keyword with the page that I have, or should I target it with a separate page? So that question of same or separate, you can actually have some data that's going to help you do that. Now, that alone, depending on how much revenue you make off your site, that can be worth its weight in gold. And the reason it does leads me to talk to you about helpful content and the breakthrough this past weekend. I don't need anybody else to tell me it's a breakthrough. I know it's a breakthrough. So quick recap for those of you who might not have listened through all 5 seasons. Through my indexation research, I discovered completely by accident what the helpful content measures. And as long as you don't get trippy on the term helpful, and you are okay by substituting the word topical for it, helpful content is measured across, if you think of all your pages on your site as the width, right? So it measures the topicalness of all your pages as a collective. Now, it makes a lot more sense when you see it that way, and it gets you to a more actionable course of content strategy. I wrote all about this in my helpful content analysis. You can find it by searching Decoding Google's Helpful Content System. You can even find it in Bing. They have a rich snippet, and it's the #1 footnote from a press release about it. There's a little bit of SEO for you. Now, after publishing it last year, Google's leaked API documentation confirmed that they do indeed have a method for measuring a topical radius based on the collective of all the pages on your domain. But there is an Achilles heel in helpful content when it comes to table of content links. And if you don't know what those are, you've experienced them, because whether you're an SEO or not, you've gone to a website where there was a page that lists the sections at the top. So if you didn't want to read the whole article, you could simply click on one of those phrases, and it would drop you down to the section that you would want. Now, going back to helpful content, in the data, I saw that it doesn't respect the canonical, or you could call it the parent page, that all those jump links are based on. Now, I've said for over a year that pages with table of content links have historically been caught in the nets of the helpful content rules, because helpful content appears to treat them as different pages. And when it does, it causes them to be identified as duplicate content on the same domain. We know that duplicate content was never great for a site, but in helpful content era, it is existential. The site loses impressions, positions, traffic, and revenue. Everything bad. It's hard to imagine that actually could be come out of something called helpful content. So what was the breakthrough this weekend? So in our industry, we have a bias that pretty much, I think it's probably more subconscious at this point, that only big data will tell you something useful. Like that's the only way to know if something is happening. And so when sites got hit with helpful content, they were separate updates. Now they're rolled into the core. And so when they're examined by well-meaning, well-trained, experienced SEOs, when they view it as aggregate data, which is everything, it's really easy to miss the cause of the decline. So follow me, okay? When we look at big graphs in Search Console, that's every last piece of Search Console data, everywhere across the world, every device, every keyword, mobile, desktop, all of those things. And it's kind of like looking at something from afar. In order to fit it all in, we're going to have to be distanced from it, right? And so we're standing back and we're squinting to see if we can see the problem. And we do this because previously that's kind of how we handled the diagnostic of every problem, is looking at big data. So when I went public with my hypothesis of helpful content, specifically the table of content portion of it, the most vociferous section, who respectively made a career out of making sense of this big data visualizations that we can do now, they were like, we can't see it. It doesn't exist. And Google would never do such a thing to a useful and helpful HTML feature such as table of contents. And I get it. But what if all we can see in the big data is the downward trend, and the only way to see the cause of it is to go into small data? Okay, I hear you now. You're going to ask me, well, Carolyn, how small are you talking? Well, that's where I played all last week and over the weekend, and that's when I sort of stumbled on this clue, and you want to know how to find it. Okay, just listen. I'm going to break down what I did. So it's Search Console, and set it to 16 months of data. That's as far back as we can go, and filter it to all pages containing a hash mark. Now, you're going to have to unselect all the fun stuff. There's 4 options across the top, and they all have a different color, and all those lines jumbled together. So you kind of want to unselect the clicks, the CTR, and the position, and just look at the impressions. Likely, if this is a site that within those 16 months, that hashtag URL is still in the data. But, if you're lucky, if you want to look for it, it kind of looks like an EKG, where it looks like the heart was beating and then it flatlined. So it's an EKG where the patient died. So when I found that, I went back to the last day of the heartbeat, and I set that as a custom date range, starting with that date, because I wanted to see what changed. And again, looking for pages with hash marks. So now the data is a little more refined. And every time I do this, I am exporting a Google Sheet, because they do tend to provide you with different tabs as you look at once you look at the Google Sheet. So for this particular one, where you've set the custom date, look for the Pages tab and look for where you can see a canonical, which is just going to be, domain.com/slug, and typically trailing slash at the end. That's all that's in there. And then underneath it, you're going to see all the anchor text URLs that are based on that page URL. And usually they're lined up together in the data. And so now that you have this, parent page you're looking at, you want to compare. You have to go back into your data filters and compare the parent page, that canonical, as an exact URL to one, repeat, one of those jump link URLs that came underneath it. And you also want to filter that to only show you the data for that exact URL. And mind you, there is nothing big data about this because, now we're talking like page to page, right? Mano a mano, and over a shorter period of time. Play with it. See what you can find. I started, playing around and keeping it shorter, but then long enough where I could, be covering where things changed. And then I started to filter to the country. In this case, it was a U.S. company. And I went with mobile appearance because, again, I want to limit how much I see. And then, as I sort of looked at the dates on the date tab, I wanted to see where for both of these URLs, what day did they both appear in the SERPs together. Now, once you have that date, so you've looked at a smaller time frame, now you've seen something. So once you get that date, go back up into the date range and put that date in the start and end field. So you're only looking at the one canonical with the one jump link on one day. And in this case, both URLs, according to Search Console data, appeared in search results at the exact same position, number 11. They were both scored. They were both have found to earn the number 11 spot. Now, I'm not calling this cannibalization. Google tore the baby from its mother, despite the canonical tag in the content, which said, keep these together. So helpful content just splits them apart, scores them separately, and in this case, to the same score. And if you've been in SEO for a minute, you understand why my hair is on fire. Have you ever seen two different URLs sharing a position in search results? No, you have not. There always has to be some sort of tiebreaker. And this thing that I'm describing, you can only see it once you start looking in the small data. Now, in response to the amount of URLs in this particular example of a site, unfortunately, this site met an untimely demise. Now, the big data reflects the response from, I guess, the ranking and scoring system in light of all that unhelpful duplicate content that was, I should say, falsely accused duplicate content because it was table of contents with a canonical tag in the meta, right? But since those individual URLs, they're pulling impressions, clicks, which means they've got a score. So now they're all scored identical to the canonical, but like I say, only in the small up close position can you see why this would be detrimental to this site. Now, again, I happen to know this site pretty well. It's one that was sent to me when all hope and all money was gone from the project. It's too late to save this patient, but maybe this information can save others. People mistake a helpful content whack job as a lack of eat or authority or something else that is vague and challenging and likely, as in the case of eat, not something a content writer can include. And helpful content is not from outer space. Like I said, it ain't hard to follow 1,000 cows on the move, and especially it isn't hard if you know what you're looking for. And if you're willing to go to the small data to dig it out, you could just be saving someone else's business. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. Thank you to Ahrefs for being the sponsor of this episode. Check the link in the description and start getting some first-class clustered keyword data. Check out Indexilla. It's my indexing platform to get content and backlinks indexed. We don't make backlinks. and it's completely within Google's terms of service, safe for your money site. You can find it at indexzilla.io. And if you got questions about your site, you need a fresh take on why things are happening as they are or not happening as they should, reach out either on Facebook or LinkedIn. To stay on the cutting edge of the state of indexing, check out Crawl or No Crawl on Substack. You can find it by searching for Crawl or No Crawl. You'll see it. And I'll see you next week for more SEO conversations, observations, and stories. If you have any questions about today's topic, you can reach out and text your question to Confessions at 512-222-3132. Thanks again, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.